All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, and this is Maintaining Frame number 190. What did men do to deserve this? Where we're going to be looking at a couple of different things. I don't want to give too much away, but the New Yorker put out an article that has gotten a bit of a reaction called "What Did Men Do to Deserve This? Changes in the economy and in the culture seem to have hit them hard." Scott Galloway believes they need an aspirational vision of masculinity by Jessica Winter. We also have a thing on Twitter that's going to be interesting. I don't want to say what it is, but suffice to say, no one was surprised. And then we have a video that is talking about what's happening to South Korea as a result of feminism.
In Japan, I think, or
no,
at least
South
comparing
Korea.
it. Okay, all right. I thought it was
South
comparing it
Korea.
to Japan, but
Japan's not doing much better. I guess a little bit better than South Korea, but not they're still in, every country is in danger of this stuff, really.
Yeah.
There is no place safe from it unless you want to live with the hunter gatherers in the bush,
Mm-hmm.
until we send educators down there to liberate the women. So yeah.
Yeah, liberate the women from the men who protect and provide for them.
Yes.
I'm sure that'll go with a society that's at the very edge of survival. I'm sure that will go really well for everyone involved. Okay, so
yeah,
I shall do the things. If you would like to send us a message and a tip, the very best way to do so is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. That is because we get the full benefit of whatever funds you send, and you will get the benefit of not sending a comment if you so choose to send one through YouTube's comment enhancement system. So that's feedthebadger.com/justthetip. Pretty soon, I keep threatening this, there will be our monthly fundraiser at feedthebadger.com/support. So look for that. And if you want to support the show, please mosey on over there and put a few shekels in the hat. Every bit helps. So don't feel like you aren't helping if you are. Okay, back to you, Brian. Let's get this started.
So just checking. Okay, good. Yeah, so this is working now. I was just making sure my chat was working as it should. Okay. So do we want to start with this article then?
Yeah, let's start with the article. Let's
all right.
I don't think it's that long, but
this was shared by
I've noticed
Better Bachelor on X. And Better
this.
Bachelor, in case you guys don't know, he's a MGTOW content creator that mostly, he basically just responds to what's happening in the world and stuff from a MGTOW point of view. And so let's see what it says. So by Jessica Winter. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, these articles don't seem to be as long as they once were. I wonder what's happening there. Have you noticed that?
I don't know. I think that they vary. I mean, when you say once were, I don't know what you're comparing it to.
Don't you remember
this one is still
a year ago? These used to be
pretty long.
Okay, all right, let's get into it. I'll stop
you see that? It just goes and goes and goes. It's probably another literature thing. Bald, white, and jacked, Scott Galloway is an action figure of the tech and finance overclass. He's an angel investor, a best-selling author, and a personal finance guru. He podcasts constantly. His hosting duties include the Prof G Pod, which offers business news takes and career advice, Pivot, in which he riffs on the news of the day with the tech journalist Kara Swisher, and the self-explanatory Raging Moderates with the Fox News personality Jessica Tarlov. For someone of this ubermensch milieu, he is surprisingly progressive and self-aware. He often acknowledges that his wealth and achievements were made likelier by his race, sex, publicly funded education, and devoted mother, who raised him mostly on her own.
So a man who didn't even have a father speaking for men? I see a problem with that. I see a problem. This man does not have any intimate experience with male vulnerability or nurturing. So his entire attitude, and when they talk about progressive, what they mean is weeps for the situation of women, not understands the vulnerabilities of men. That's what they mean. And also why you know how they start with these gross stereotypes? Like
I was just gonna
bald,
point
jacked.
that out. She's like, for someone of this Ubermensch milieu, like immediately goes into like the usual suspects, right? And then basically says, "I know you're judging him the exact same way I would judge him." It's like, no, you're doing that. I don't know who this guy is.
Yeah, and
I don't.
none of this makes him sound like he's an authority on men.
Yeah.
Like who assigned this man to talk for men? I mean, I know that's ironic coming from me, but at least I try to
Well, I don't. Is this guy like? Okay, wait. So is this article? Well, I haven't read it yet. So I
yeah.
guess what I'm wondering, because this woman
Mhm.
who wrote this article sounds like she's being a bit hostile towards Scott Galloway. So is Scott Galloway the
No.
bad guy, or is this woman the bad guy? Like, what are we doing? Like, what's going on?
No, Scott Galloway is, I'm pretty sure that he is, and I will confirm this.
All right.
Using Grok, and I will try this time because I know you guys complained about last time me getting distracted by Grok, and I apologize for that. I'll try to keep it more succinct,
All right.
but
Well, I'll read the
this
next paragraph
he
while you
is
do
a
that.
feminist ally. And again, right off the bat, he agrees with the narrative of male burden, male parasitism. That, I mean, read that last sentence again.
Well, it's a run-on sentence, but for someone of this Ubermensch milieu, he is surprisingly progressive and self-aware. He often acknowledges that his wealth and achievements were made likelier by his race, sex, publicly funded education, and devoted mother who raised him mostly on her own. So yeah, he basically says if it weren't for the fact that I was a straight white male,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be this successful.
Yeah. All right. So he already buys into the feminist framework right off the
Yeah,
bat.
yeah.
So she may be treating him in a hostile manner, but it's because she's trying to create street cred for this man. And
Well,
again,
and also there's like if they treat this man as one end of the Overton window and her perspective as the other end of the Overton window, then there's no room for our position because it doesn't fit in that. So like those are they're establishing the borders, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So
yeah,
like this guy is about as extreme as you get to be when it comes to sympathy for men,
which
is
is
essentially
none.
what they're saying.
Because it only
Right.
can exist within a narrative that is inherently unsympathetic. And we can go into just how nasty and noxious the feminist narrative is and how much of a denial of academic ethics it is. Because I've actually sort of researched this a little bit further. And it is astoundingly awful stuff. But he has to exist within the framework, and it's a framework that denies, on a fundamental sense, any sympathy for men, because it's a framework that promotes the narrative that men are a burden on society and women. There's nowhere to
Mhm.
go. There's nowhere for the sympathy to land in that narrative. So you can make mouth noises all you want, but what you're actually saying is that men are not deserving of sympathy, and their vulnerabilities are their own fault. That's the other thing that's implicit in that statement. It's a bootstraps statement because it's saying what that guy is saying is that every one of you who have failed have done so despite being granted advantages that other people and women do not get. So you are double failures. That's what the narrative says. This narrative cannot help men. It can only induce guilt. Guilt is actually the more positive emotion. It can only induce shame and lead men on the path towards self-destruction. Small self-destruction, which is just beating yourself up over your failures, and then large self-destruction, which is removing yourself entirely from the narrative of the human race. This is sick shit. And Scott Galloway is not an advocate for men. He is a Pied Piper for a toxic, demonic narrative about men. Continue.
All right.
So
In
no,
recent years, Galloway has also become a leading evangelist for a notion that rapidly solidified into conventional wisdom. So it's a notion. America's young men are in crisis. Seldom in recent memory has there been a cohort that's fallen farther faster, he writes in his new book, Notes on Being a Man. To make his case, Galloway pulls from a heavily circulated set of statistics. At colleges and universities nationwide, female students outnumber males by about 3 to 2.
okay.
Among young adults, men are more likely than women to live with their parents, By their mid-30s, more than 15% of men still live with their folks, compared to less than 9% of women.
All right.
Do you want to say anything to that?
Yeah, I want to say something, but of course, the assumption here is that they're operating off of privilege rather than disadvantage. Even though we have literally pursued disadvantaging men in all of our institutions. Okay, that this is undeniable. We have said that we are going to do this, and we have done it. It's undeniable. But what I want to point out is this is the kind of counter argument that we've talked about. I pointed out a while ago. Remember Rose Wrist? He was a perfect example of this. Well, actually, he wasn't a perfect example of this, but there was another feminist who ended up being a perfect. Let me just get into what it is. They will agree with all of the issues. Right? They'll agree with every single one of them. They will deny the fact that this as actually counter evidence for their framework around reality. All of the stuff that he's describing is counter evidence for his framework that men are advantaged by a patriarchal society. So he will acknowledge it, and now he's going to do a song and dance to put the blame squarely on men and put the trauma or the victimhood squarely on women. This is my prediction. I will be absolutely astounded. I tell you what, if my prediction doesn't come true, I will turn off my camera and I will go play with my cat, which would probably be more of a reward for me. But but anyway, let's keep going.
All right. So yeah, no, I was gonna say about like women living with their folks less than 9%. I think that there's like it's not just because women are given every possible opportunity to get a job. They're more likely to get hired. They're better educated, or at least they get a better education, more education, not necessarily good education. But also because like a man probably has to be able to sustain himself before he can move out. A woman does not. She can just move in with a man that has made it. So like she can just do that, and that's probably what happens most of the time. Is a woman goes, "Well, I'm going to go live with my boyfriend."
Yeah, exactly. Remember those two videos that we did with Caleb Hammer? Yes, or like a couple days ago. The one woman had her rent and her utilities paid for by her boyfriend, and the other woman wasn't working, so she had her rent and her utilities paid for by her boyfriend. Where are they in these stats?
Yeah, they're not. That's
they're
right.
not.
They're victims of men in those stats.
Okay, but this is not an honest stat. What we really should look at is how many men are supporting themselves versus how many women. And I'm guessing that would really switch the percentages. And all that really shows is that women aren't willing, when they're a financial success, they aren't willing to pay for their partners, but men are.
Yep.
Privilege. Everybody, privilege.
All right. Among young adults, men are more likely than women to. Oh, I already read that part. Sorry. Men die by suicide about 3.5 times the rate that women do. Men's real wages are lower for the 10th and 15th percentiles of earners than they were in 1979. Currently, the unemployment rate among young men with bachelor's degrees between the ages of 23 and 30 is close to double that of their female peers. Okay. Yes, all that's true. And again, I just want to point out that men, when they were making, I guess, this says here about their wages. But remember, back then, when men were making money, even if they were making more than women, that's irrelevant. Who did they spend the money on?
Yeah,
like the money itself is meaningless. Who benefits from his pay? It's usually the woman or the family in his life. That's why they work. Okay.
Yes.
So anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, the narrative that he is, we've already said currently the unemployment rate. You've already done that sentence. The narrative that he's promoting, first of all of this is counter evidence. And nowhere do these people, because they're not intellectually honest, say, oh, we have to contend with this in our theory. We have to incorporate it, because fundamentally, feminism is the theory or the conjecture that society benefits men over women, period. Now, we can get into the weeds about men being in positions of authority, but that doesn't matter. What it ultimately comes down to is, does society benefit men over women? All of this evidence is counter evidence to that. Okay. So essentially, feminism reverses the causal relationship. It says, because men are in authority, then women are oppressed. Well, you have to actually show that. You can't just assume women are oppressed by only looking at situations of female disadvantage and then say that is because men are in authority. This is terrible science. And it gets even worse. And I'll get into it as it goes. But this whole narrative, they never acknowledge that they have to prove the premise that he established in the first paragraph, which is that men are privileged in our society. And then they go through all of the evidence that that isn't the case, and they still land on the same thing because it is a unfalsifiable cultish belief. All right, let's keep going.
All right. These numbers have roused bipartisan concern. In March, Governor Gavin Newsom of California, on the debut episode of his new podcast, welcomed the conservative influencer Charlie Kirk, who lamented Gen Z as the most alcohol addicted, most drug addicted, most suicidal, most depressed, most medicated generation in history. All right, pausing there for a moment.
Wow.
It's true, but it's a bit like, the thing is, he wasn't referring to men specifically. He was talking about like Generation Z. I think that it's not really clear. I think that the women are really medicated. I think like a quarter of them are on SSRIs or something. I don't know about the drugs, alcohol. The men are probably suicidal, I would imagine. Like, legitimately suicidal, not like pretend suicidal. And depressed maybe, or at least anxious. But yeah, so I'm just saying, I don't know where she's going with this, but this statement made by Charlie Kirk is not untrue, but it's also not gendered or not sex specific. So all right. And these under 30s, Kirk said, were receiving a pernicious message. You're not going to have the same American dream that your parents would have. He and his fellow conservative organizers saw this as an opportunity, he added, especially with young men. An an opportunity. Who said that? So, because like I don't know that Charlie Kirk said that. He and his fellow,
an opportunity for what is what I'm curious about.
especially with young men. Okay, to like I don't know. Then that's a weird phrasing, because I think that it's making Charlie Kirk sound like he was preying on this situation, and I don't think.
Yes.
I
No, I
haven't
don't.
watched all of Kirk's like clips ever, but I don't think that's the case. He was a Zoomer, and he was
Yeah.
one of the lucky ones, and he knows that, and he has said that. So, but
Well,
anyway,
was one of the lucky ones.
I said yeah, until they
Yeah.
murdered him. But okay, so Donald Trump won men under age 30 by 56% in the 2024 election, up 15 points from 2020. For these gains, Kirk credited the coalescing electoral power of the right-leaning constellation of podcasters and streamers known as the Manosphere, which encompasses libertarian bros, evangelical Christians, and white nationalists. Oh God.
Oh, good
Do
Lord.
this.
It's everything now. It's literally everything. You like meat, you're part of the manosphere. Like, we might as well just say masculinity.
Well, that's what they mean. Yeah.
Yes.
Basically,
That's what they mean.
any podcast that has a dude in it that's not apologizing for being a dude, that
Yeah, for
doesn't begin
existing.
his every show with "I was born into privilege because I'm a man." That,
Yes.
like, any man that does that, yeah,
Doesn't
and
do
women too.
the hail privileges. I was
Mhm.
born into privilege. I was born into entitlement. I was born with unearned access. Like, every dude has to do this. I have to feel ashamed of existing as a man.
Yep. Otherwise, you get lumped in to the manosphere, which is basically, yeah, it's a bunch of shit that's even like counter, like it's paradoxical. Libertarian bros, evangelical Christians, and white nationalists. Okay,
Yeah.
so
But also people
okay.
who are for free speech and everything else. Like all of the values that got us a prosperous modern society. If you're for them, you're also a bro. You're also because because they're sort of masculine values. They're not based on desire for security and risk aversion, which risk being risk tolerant is that's part of the manosphere.
True. Being like a gym influencer, fitness influencer, dude, manosphere.
And definitely, if you have any criticisms of women ever, including those that would develop them as moral agents in their own lives, that is manosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's.
All right. Anyway,
Interest of ever getting this done. Let's keep going. You're right. It is
Newsom,
huge.
who is angling to become the next Democratic presidential nominee, appeared to be listening closely. At the end of July, he issued an executive order intended to, quote, confront California's growing crisis of connection and opportunity for men and boys, end quote. A week later, another likely Democratic contender. By the way, that executive order was nothing but virtue signaling. You can't legislate people hanging out. You can't do that. But what you could do is not lock them up in their house for like 5 years. And you could also stay the fuck out of the way when men want to get together and don't like shame them for doing so. How about that? But they're not going to do that. Anyway, sorry. That just annoyed me because we covered that executive order, which people are just saying, like, I get that. I love that a politician can say, I'm going to do an executive order that makes every day Christmas. And people like status types, like leftists, they'll be like, well, he made every day Christmas, guys. So like it should just be Christmas all the time now. Like what the hell's wrong with you? How do you think this works? Why do you you're literally a child. Like you have not left even if you don't live with your parents, you haven't left your parents' house. You still think that mommy and daddy just make things happen with words. And so that's what this is. It annoys me to no end. And any man can see right through that. They'll be like, well, so what? You said this. So what? Sorry.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, because this is the thing, it gets him some like sympathy so he can get votes. That's what he's trying to do. That's all it's about. And if anything, he's going to get them from women because they're the ones that are the most likely to fall prey to this shit. Well, dude, I'm going to vote for Newsom. He makes it Christmas every day. I'm going to vote for him. I'm voting for Christmas. If you're pro Christmas, you'll vote for Gavin Newsom because he's making it real.
Okay.
And you guys think Santa Claus doesn't exist. He does, and he looks like an American psycho. But anyway, at the end of July, what? Oh, I already read that one. A week later, another likely Democratic contender, the former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, published an op-ed in the Washington Post that linked unaffordable housing and healthcare to an increasingly dependent mood amongst young men. You don't have to be an incel to believe that the system is fundamentally broken and rigged against your success, Emanuel wrote. Again, complete bullshit. He's doing it for votes. Yes, men are worried about housing prices, but they don't think the government is just going to make them free. That's woman thinking. That's not men thinking. Men have never thought that just wanting something to be free is actually something they can benefit from. If you make things free, women get it first and men pay for it. That's the way it works. Mm-hmm. That's the way it works.
Well, consider, okay, all right. I will do a counterpoint. Maybe these dudes want this stuff to be free so women get it. They could be just seeing it as a means to get women stuff even when they can't, which is so utterly depressing. You see what I'm saying?
Which dudes are we talking about? The politicians?
Well, the ones that vote for these people. The vote for Gavin Newsom and Rahm Emanuel. They might be framing young men might be framing this. Well, first of all, they're probably invested in thinking that the feminine way of thinking, eschewing altruistic punishment, giving handouts is morally correct. But the other thing is they may not be as concerned about what they're going to get in this socialist or communist system. They may be more concerned that women get the things they need because they are men still, even if they are wrong conceptually about the world and philosophy and economics, they are still men. And they may be looking at it, well, at least women will get something, knowing that they won't get anything. And they're probably also wanting some kind of purpose. This is what I see about young men, even on the left, even the horrible communists. They're communists because they want somebody to tell them what they should do, how to serve. They aren't communists. And this is the thing that really annoys me about conservatives and conservative interpretations of men on the left. They don't do these things because they want to exploit people. They do them because the women around them tell them it's the right thing to do, and because they want to see that women don't end up in poverty, and they think communism or socialism is going to do that, and they think that it's going to give them some meaning, some connection towards what they need to do to improve the world around them. That's why these men are doing this. And the conservative interpretation is that they're selfish and entitled. No. Stop for a second. Look at the women promoting communism and socialism, and you will see selfishness and entitlement. They're promoting it because they want freebies. They're promoting it because they cannot acknowledge that their form of morality isn't the only one. So I'm just going to put that out there, because I think I will push back against condemnation of these men, like blanket condemnation. Yes, they are wrong about economics. They are wrong about the beneficence of government. They're wrong about stripping other people of their rights. But from what I'm seeing, they're doing it from a very different place than the women who are advocating for it. Okay, so.
Well, no, I don't disagree with any of that. But I do think it's immoral to do that, because you are stealing. You're just using the state to do it. But that being said, yes, I do think they're doing it. They're putting women first in doing this. Yes.
Yeah, and well, the implication was that they were doing it because, and I think there's fundamentally different motives between men and women in pursuing communism. And consider that these young men have been told all of their life that they themselves are a net detriment to women, right? And that wanting to protect and provide for a woman is oppressing a woman. So they still want to do it. How do they do it? They do it through government. You see?
Yeah, sure.
This is where this corruption is coming from in young men's thinking. And I do think it's corruption, because, I will disagree strongly with the person like Shu on this. This is not economically viable. Giving government more money to spend does not help the situation if the problem is that the government is spending the economy into absolute destruction. And I'm going to use an example of the collusion and how this is creating, it's like a Tower of Babel. It's getting larger and larger. Look at the current AI bubble. And it really is a bubble, because honestly, I've been using AI for a few months now, and I've been looking at its strengths and weaknesses. It is not going to replicate the creativity in certain aspects of people's productivity. But what it will do, it will enable everyone to be able to destroy scientific consensus and academic authority. So it's going to break a lot of that. And I don't know if our society is prepared for it. But furthermore, there's not a lot of money in that. Like, the best thing that AI does is give us a mirror to our own conceits and biases. There's no money in that. And if the only way they're going to make these big AI firms are going to make money is if most of the people on Earth are laid off. And then where is the economy going to come from? So it's this gigantic bubble, and it's sustained by one AI company giving gigantic contracts to another AI company. So it's essentially just passing the buck. So I'm going to borrow $10 from you to do a contract with $10 with NVIDIA, and all around it's like a circle jerk of contracts. And that is where this increasing stock price is coming from. That. And why are they doing that with absolutely no real, I can't emphasize this enough. There's no real path to the kind of money to justify the market cap of these companies. There's none, without the complete destruction of our economy. So how are they justifying all this? How is NVIDIA, the head of NVIDIA, saying to himself, wow, this seems a little bit like a Jenga tower with most of the blocks removed. This seems a bit sketch. Maybe we should pull back from this. You know what he says? We're going to be too big to fail. The US government is going to bail us out. the whole idea of the US government bailing out corporations, the whole idea of government spending, underwriting the economy, is why we are facing economic Armageddon, right? So no, I don't agree with any of this. And the problem is that corporations always get it first because they're defined as people, but they're like super people who are better than you. It's not just women get it first, corporations get it first in this government corporate collusion. So yeah. All right. I don't know where I stand on the political axis. You can untangle all of the things I said, but literally we are facing economic Armageddon because of the precedent set of too big to fail and governments just going in and spending money to prop up failing industries. And these industries are failing possibly because the heads of these industries, the heads of these companies, know the government will do it. So they're willing to take absurd risks because they know they're not holding the bag at the end of the day. Which is really feminine thinking if you think about it. All right, let's
All right. So anyway, like Newsom, Emmanuel is doing what a certain kind of Democrat does best, triangulating. Both politicians have accepted at face value Kirk's premise. A young American men are in terrible and unprecedented straits, and those currents are yanking them rightward. But they want to steer the conversation away from demagoguery and misogynist sloganeering and toward a middle ground of respectful debate and technocratic fixes. So it's the dialectic. Like we will accept some of this. Can we have some of the stuff that's killing men? Just like half of the stuff that's killing men, and then maybe we'll consider compromising on some of the other things. That's what that is, right? I mean, like demagoguery based on what? And misogynist sloganeering, who gives a shit?
I don't even know if we'll be able to get through this. It's so freaking dense and stupid. Yeah, but something that just occurred to me is the misogynistic thinking. Okay, I'm sure a lot of people, because you guys are all really conscientious and keeners, you've had the experience of having a school project and you get assigned a partner that doesn't pull their weight. You've had that experience, Brian?
Yeah, sure.
Right? Okay. We are in a society where we've all been assigned a school project and women aren't pulling their weight. And misogyny is pointing that out. Guys aren't pulling your weight. Like you got these outside influence on the social narrative, and you're not doing your part to make it make sense or be consistent. And that misogyny is saying that at all. It's like that whole slogan, women hold up half the sky. And it's empowerment to say that women hold up half the sky, but it's misogyny to say, so do it. Like, why aren't you doing it?
You and also to ask the question, who holds the other half?
Yeah. Yeah, so essentially that phrase, women hold up half the sky, means that women hold up the entirety of the sky, but only men are to blame for the actual consequences of not doing so. That's misogyny, guys. And I got to check the time because I have a rant. Because I have consistently found now, every time that I talk to a feminist who uses these buzz terms of misogyny, I have asked Grok to estimate their diminishment of consequential agency of women versus men. What does that mean? It means that you take an action and the action has meaningful consequences in the greater world. Every single time, feminist women diminish women's consequential agency at about 75 to 90 or 95% relative to men. And then recently I've been asking Grok to create a shocking neurological, like a shocking visual to demonstrate what these women are doing. And what they're doing consistently is lobotomizing the prefrontal cortex of women. This entire ideology lobotomizes the prefrontal cortex of women. And then when men point out that the drooling idiot that they have been assigned to is not doing her work in the project that they need to get done so that everyone survives, feminists call it misogyny as they sharpen their ice pick for the next lobotomy. Okay.
All right.
Yes.
So, Emmanuel sees elixirs for young male malaise in the form of new zoning regulations and tax credits for first time homeowners. Theo Vaughn's audience, the Barstool crowd, they can't get enough of this stuff. But Emmanuel does not see such promise in New York City's mayor elect, the Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani, even though Mamdani's campaign focused relentlessly on affordability. And according to early exit polling, he won male voters between the ages of 18 to 29 by an astonishing 40 points. Although that election was decided by women, not men. Yes, there were a number of men that voted for him, but women are the ones that brought it home.
Yeah.
And I talked about this on yesterday's show, and I made a video about it. And Wignats got into my comments and were like, "No, it was brown people." And it's true that a high percentage of Muslim immigrants that just got here voted for him, but they paled in the actual like numbers compared to the number of women who voted for him, and they were
Yeah.
voting for free shit.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, yeah, a lot of men did too. And it's a shame because I think that they're, I think they're just misinformed. I think they get the idea they're going to get something and they're not going to. But yes, women are the ones that put that guy in office. And I want people to understand that. And that's the funny thing about Wignats is that they get lumped in with the manosphere, but they can't seem to see men in their, I don't know, in their framework of seeing everything in terms of racial dynamics. And that's a shame for them because they will continue to lose until they understand that their women are their greatest enemy, not the brown guy across the street. Sorry. So it's the woman. It's the woman that's voting for these policies and doesn't give a shit, wants to kill your babies and reproduce with strange men. So
Mm,
that's your problem. Anyway,
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so when
Yeah. It's the
Emmanuel,
women.
yeah, it was a women. Yeah.
Okay.
When Emmanuel wrote into the Wall Street Journal to criticize Mamdani's unabashedly leftist agenda, the letter was headlined, "My party's future isn't Mamdani's New York." Yeah, so what? I mean, yeah, some I don't want to call them moderates, but like some Democrats don't want what Mamdani wants, but that doesn't matter because he has the women's vote, and that's what you're going to get now. Because you didn't stop to think, I wonder if men need help. So now you're just in an endless spiral of trying to please women, and that's where it's going. Anyway,
And
what
we
some
wonder where
Democrats
these
would, huh?
these highly centralized dictatorial cultures with harems come from.
Yeah,
No offense. Like, what do you think that, like, seriously, this guy gets into power and he surrounds himself with women.
yep.
What do you think a harem was in the past, guys? Okay. Let's keep going.
All right. What some Democrats would prefer, it seems, is a centrist manosphere of their own. One imagines a podcast studio attached to a well-appointed gym where a bunch of white guys are discussing abundance over beta-alanine smoothies and doing pistol squats to the theme song from Pod Save America. So again, another dismissal. Oh, it's so silly. Why would you want a centrist manosphere? Whatever that even means. Um, in notes on being a man, Galloway, who has expressed bullishness on the presidential prospects of both Newsom and Emmanuel, declares that discontented members of Gen Z and the boys and teens of Gen Alpha
Okay.
need an aspirational vision of masculinity, a vision opposed to the misogynist messaging that's epitomized by influencers such as Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes. So, do you want to say anything to that? Because I can say something.
Yes,
Oh,
just
Allison stepped away. Okay.
yeah, I'm under sustained void cat attack, so I'm trying to see if maybe if I sit down on the couch for a sec, she'll just settle down.
Yeah.
So you know what? Take it away. And if
All
I
right.
see if I hear something, because I will be listening. I'm never
Yeah.
far away. I'm
All right.
always
All right.
listening, always watching.
So that's fine. So okay. So this is the thing that I'm getting from this. Okay. The woman who wrote this article thinks that Rahm Emanuel and Gavin Newsom are centrist and that what they want to build, she doesn't want. Does that track? Let me read it again, okay? What some Democrats would prefer, it seems, is a centrist manosphere of their own. And one imagines a podcast studio attached to a well-appointed gym where a bunch of white guys are discussing abundance over beta-alanine smoothies and doing pistol squats to the theme song from Pod Save America. In Notes on Being a Man, Galloway, who has expressed bullishness on the presidential prospects of both Newsom and Emanuel, declares that discontented members of Gen Z and the boys of Gen Alpha need an aspirational vision of masculinity. She thinks that that's where her claim is, that guys like Gavin Newsom and Rahm Emanuel are centrist Democrats or center left guys, and that they would be building a centrist manosphere, which I think she dislikes. She wants them to be like far left. That's what she wants.
Oh, but I think far left in this case is just completely wrapped around women. Because I think that's what she
Absolutely.
means. What she means by
Well, she
centrist.
wouldn't call it far left. She'd call it normal.
Yeah. Well, yes, exactly. It's interesting she's using these political labels because that's not what she's saying. What she's saying is people who deserve to exist and people who do not deserve to exist. So the non-people like Gavin Newsom and Emmanuel, they actually look at the situation and they see other things that are wrong aside from men. So they're centrist. So the far right doesn't see men as a problem. Centrist people recognize that men are a problem, but there are other problems. And the real people, the good people, the people that deserve to exist, recognize that men are the only problem. I think that's her political landscape. That is terrifying. Yep. Continue, Brian. And I sort of like the void cat because, okay, so I went over to the couch. I'm like, okay, come here. I'll snuggle with you. I'll snuggle. Let me explain. I went over to the couch. I called the cat over. I'm like, okay, we can snuggle. Like, I'll give you some undivided attention. She sat over there and ignored me. But as soon as I come here, she's like, she has to be in like a fly. And I'm wondering, perhaps this is stressing her, or is it just because she doesn't want me to pay attention to anything but her? But if I am paying attention only to her, then she can't cat block someone else from getting my attention. I don't know. Anybody who understands cat psychology, maybe explain this. All right, let's continue.
All right. So she also makes sure to point out that anything to avoid the misogynist messaging epitomized by Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes. So those two, they have like, they're basically like lepers, absolute lepers at all costs. Don't even move towards that. So that's a non-starter. Part self-help memoir and part dudes rock polemic, the book presents a capital letter credo: men protect, provide, and procreate. Masculinity can be expressed simply by getting up at fucking 6 a.m. and going to work and doing shitty work such that you can protect your family economically, Galloway once said. So yeah, I mean, like, and this guy is pro Gavin Newsom and Rahm Emanuel. So it's almost like these guys don't know what men need, and so all they have is what they think men have always done. And that's all they got. They have nothing. There's nothing progressive here at all, obviously. It's like they've never been progressive because that's a bullshit label to hide what they really are, which is basically just like misandrist communists. So
tribalists. Yeah,
they are. They want men to be a slave class. Like, that was, speaking of which, there was an interesting rant that I put in my on my ex of Nick Fuentes, and he was saying that if aliens came here and they didn't know anything about humans and they watched humans, they would think men were a slave class, like compared to women. That, like, and he observed that, he noticed that, and he said that. So say what you want about him. I don't know, like, he's one of those people that you can't pin down what they actually believe because they're constantly changing things. But that was a correct statement. So, all right. But anyway, and the evolved man also ensures that he does not slack off domestically, emotionally, or logistically, leaving his partner to ask, in Galloway's signature demotic, okay, boss, what the fuck are you bringing to the table?
So Galloway basically just adds. So not only does a man have to be a provider, protector, and I guess procreator means saying yes to your woman to whatever she wants to do sexually, he also has to do his half, more than his half of his traditional. He has to do his traditional role, and then he has to do half of her traditional role. including the role that she will claim she does better, which is emotional labor, and also logistically managing the household.
Yep.
So yeah, this is basically traditional masculinity, but more of
Yeah,
it.
and that's really what feminism, like what it ends up being, is traditional masculinity plus more. Basically, traditional masculinity without the thank you,
Yeah.
like
Well,
without the with.
that's mainstream feminism. Radical feminism is traditional masculinity without ever being in the presence of a woman ever.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Right.
the legitimacy of this, her political, what her political access appears to be is the legitimacy of the male identity in and of itself.
Hmm.
So the reason why Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes, even though I don't really think that they are liberating men from anything in this axis, they are represent masculinity as having a value in and of itself. Now that's where
Yeah.
I would agree with Nick Fuentes and Andrew Tate. Galloway, who is a centrist, and Gavin, who is a centrist, says masculinity has a value in service to women. That's the traditional masculinity plus no thank you. Like you don't even get any gratitude. And then far left is masculinity has no value at all, which is why men should be slaves.
Hmm. Yes. Basically.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
The good man of the reasonable center, in Galloway's view, adheres to a code indistinguishable from that of the Boy Scouts: mental and physical fitness, emotional resilience, hard work, financial prudence, caring for others. Few could object to any of this. But the person it describes, a kind of conscientious sort who aspires to make a decent living and who looks after their loved ones, seems blessedly gender free. So why make this about manhood? Even the Boy Scouts have gone co ed. So now it's like, here are a bunch of qualities that I think will be good for men. And she's like, why does it have to be men though?
Yes, and that's the problem that I've identified multiple times in the past. They can't allow anything, any unique good for masculinity or men. And
Nope.
these are the people who say that this is all about socialization, right? They say that all the bad that men do is supposedly about socialization, although they don't live up to the socialization explanation. Like you can't
Yeah.
just say
Jojo.
things. You can't just say
Oh.
things in research. That's not the way academia is supposed to work. If you say it's about socialization, you need to have a plausible mechanism for how socialization explains the universality of male ideology. Because feminists say that male ideology has 100% penetration with men, right? So it's basically one-to-one with men. Well, no socialization does that. And yet that's what they claim. So in essence, they want to treat male ideology as a bioessentialist label. So in other words, it's just there by virtue of a man being a man, because it's one-to-one with being a man identifying as a man. So they want to have the bioessentialist like 100% penetration, but pretend they're talking about socialization. So they don't have to deal with the ethical questioning of creating bioessentialist categories, like saying you are this because you were born this way. And that is subject to a lot of ethical scrutiny in academia, but feminists aren't, because they hand wave it as socialization, even though no socialization could possibly ever have created 100% penetration of masculine ideology across ethnic, across cultural, across racial, across religious, across national lines. There's no socialization, no plausible mechanism of socialization that could create that level of penetration. And yet they're allowed to assert this and pretend it's not bioessentialist, pretend they're not literally saying men are bad because that biological category is bad. They are born criminal, right? That's
Hmm.
what they're saying. And they're not supposed to be allowed to say that in academia, but for some reason, academia let them get away with it. They say it's so, they say that they're appealing to socialization, but the functional thing that they're describing is assigning a criminal category based on somebody's genetics. You are a criminal because of your genetics. That's what they're doing to men. You are a criminal because of XY. That's what they're doing. And I can't overstate this enough. This is a massive ethical breach that has been allowed to go on for 70 years in academia with nobody saying boo to these people. And everybody just titters every time this bioessentialist bigotry of you are born criminal because you're a man pukes up a bit of genocidal ambition in any one of its adherents. Like, we'll reduce the male population down to 10%. We'll treat men like library books that women can check out and rape when they want. Anytime this just sort of bubbles up from this massive, evil, ethical monstrosity, unethical monstrosity, everybody just titters about it. And yet it's basically like, you know, the lava, like the vents on a volcano, showing the massive amount of corruption and cultural rot below it. And this is corruption and cultural rot. This should never have happened. There should never have been an academic branch that basically declared half the human race criminal because of their biology. That shouldn't have happened. We should have had safeguards against that. Our current academia prides itself on having safeguards against that. And yet, what has happened? I don't know if any, like, I'm sorry, I used a lot of very abstract stuff, but I hope you understand that it is not acceptable to regard half the human race as born criminal because of their genetics.
Yeah.
And that there is no plausible socialization mechanism to explain that. There's none. And it's only appealed to in order to avoid the recognition of the massive ethical breach that feminism represents. It is a massive ethical breach. This shouldn't have happened. Feminism shouldn't have happened. It's not just that it did happen, it shouldn't have happened. And we don't even have to appeal to a patriarchy that doesn't care about women. If academia applied its ethical rigor consistently, feminism would never have happened. They weren't even held to the standards of any other science. And they were allowed to fester and infect policy, government, academia, NGOs, people dealing with social ills like domestic violence and sexual assault. Like this is I hate to tell you guys, but this is like our society has terminal 4th stage cancer. And I don't know, maybe we could be a cautionary tale for the next one. All right, let's keep going.
Well, I got a couple super chows, so
sure.
Richard Bier gives us $5 and says a super chow and says, "Don't you know just how much better life will be without electricity, indoor toilets, internet, and other modern technology? Think about how much better off the environment will be without so much carbon emissions that results from the technological lifestyle." Yeah, well, we're gonna find out probably. So, I can't wait. It's like Christmas morning, which maybe not because it hasn't been put into law or policy, so maybe not Christmas. Then Great Indoors gives us $5 and says $5 for a close-up of the magnificent rascal called Void Cat, please.
Okay, let me see if I can get her. Can you see her?
Yep.
Okay, there you go. I'll do it briefly so that she does not become unsettled. There you go. Okay, let's do some more.
All right. The good man. I already read that part. So yeah, I just want to point out that she like makes this little remark about the Boy Scouts going co-ed. That's actually kind of like that's like a victory face stomp. I'm just letting you know. Like the Boy Scouts were destroyed because they let women in, I think, and it wasn't meant for women, and there was already a Girl Scouts, but that wasn't enough. So like even though we already had a Girl Scouts, the women wanted to be in the Boy Scouts too. And now there's the Girl Scouts and then there's just the Scouts.
The main
So
problem is that she doesn't want to acknowledge that there is anything good about men or masculinity, any kind of
right.
unique good.
But this is just like an extra taunt on top of that, even though she's
Yeah.
trying to like make a claim like, well, haven't we moved on from men having an identity? Um, even the Boy Scouts are basically destroyed. So, all right, there is no question that the generations long erosion of the US manufacturing base and the whatever, the shrinking of the unionized pension jobs that this sector had offered disproportionately harmed working class men. This is perhaps especially true for Black men, whose access to these steady, well paying jobs greatly expanded following the victories of the civil rights movement, which we have to point out because, Black men are only, they're not men, they're just Black. So that's what it is. I don't care about them because they're men. I don't even care about them because they're Black. They're just useful to like drive home how good of a person I am.
Yeah.
Ongoing industrial collapse has shaped many of the statistics that are central to the man crisis discourse. Yet, if you tilt some of the most commonly cited data points this way or that, you can just as easily argue on the behalf of a woman crisis as a man crisis, or perhaps most accurately for an ongoing multi-directional crisis affecting us all.
So now we are moving into women have it worse. So
Yes.
she has basically gone away from this idea of recognizing that masculinity has any inherent value. Like, and honestly, you cannot avoid recognizing that masculinity has inherent value if you recognize biological differences, right? If you recognize there are biological effects of testosterone, then you have to recognize that men have a unique value. And for example, and it seems to center around their higher risk tolerance, which leads to the ability to sacrifice oneself in certain areas that are very critical for the maintenance of a modern society. So, for example, men are far more willing to sacrifice their lives to help others. Okay. Now, their effective empathy is actually pretty much found to be equal to that of women. That means that not the empathy of being able to read another person's emotional states, which doesn't mean that you're going to be impacted by them to do anything, but the empathy of reacting to people being hurt or people being in trouble. And the way that men react to that is they absolutely 100% react as much as women to depictions of other people in pain. So they 100% react to it. And that's based on physiological markers that can't be misunderstood or misconstrued, like social reports. But the difference is that while women have a greater, I think, affective empathy, so they actually internalize or feel that emotion that they are seeing, men pivot to threat detection, right? To external analysis for threat detection. And coupled with the fact that they are much less risk adverse, this is why they sacrifice themselves. When they see someone in potential danger, when they see someone hurting, men are much more likely to physically sacrifice themselves to prevent that person from being harmed further or put in more danger. And they are specifically psychologically or physiologically cued to do this. And it also has another effect that we're going to cover later. It's the Twitter thing that we mentioned. So just keep this in mind. It has an effect when it comes to social groups and cultural groups as well. We'll get into that later. I just wanted to point that out because she is saying what she's really pushing back against is the idea that men have any legitimacy whatsoever, that there is anything good about men. That's what she's pushing back against. That's what she doesn't like.
Or
She
that
wants
men have
everything.
inmates that like are unique to them or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's what she's pushing back against. The very concept that men have validity, which ties into her belief system, because the feminist belief system is a bioessentialist bigotry that says that men are born criminal because they are men.
Yep.
Okay, and
All
criminals
right.
don't have legitimacy, right? Okay, let's
Right.
keep going.
So we've been doing this for a little over an hour. I don't know if you want to. We have two other things that we're going to be looking at, right?
Do you
But
want to continue
I can
this,
do a little. Huh?
or you can summarize what's the rest?
Well,
What's your
I
plan?
don't know what the rest of it is, but I can read this paragraph. I mean, I think what she's going to do is she's going to explain that women, yeah, women have it worse. So the college gender gap, or that men don't have it as bad as they think. The college gender gap, for instance, could be evidence of a rudderless, demoralized generation of young men. But have you considered that it also could be the product of differing economic incentives, like the pay gap? A paper published last year by Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce examines the labor landscape of rural America, noting that women need more education to earn the same amount of money as men, and that the less education a worker has, the more this gender gap widens. The overall trajectory for the lowest earning men is not good, certainly, but it's not clear that their female counterparts are faring better. So they did this paper in rural America, noting that women need more education to earn the same amount of money as men. Again, like,
But they're still getting it.
yeah, like, well, what do you like? Who cares who makes the money? Who is the money spent on? Like, a man could make billions of dollars and a woman can have no job and get all of his money. So who cares who makes the money? Like, this is the only thing they have is men make more money. Yeah, but what do they make it for? What do men earn money for? What do they do
Yeah.
with it? What does the average man do with his money? He buys nice things, a house, a car. Why? To attract a woman. What for? So he can give that money to her. That's why. So, like, this whole men make more. When women make more money, do they give it to men? No, they spend it on themselves. So men spend money on women, and women spend money on women, on
Yep.
themselves. So then, like, why are we looking at how much somebody's making? It's like, why? Why aren't we looking at
Not
where
spending.
money
Yeah.
is being spent?
Well,
So
because one actually emphasizes women's victimhood, and the other recognizes that they're not really victims if they're spending more than men. Okay, let's go to the
no.
next. Let's go.
Let's go what?
Next paragraph. Let's
The
see how much.
suicide gender gap, for another example, is actually narrowing. In 2007, it was 5-1, and young women attempt suicide more often than young men do. Women's wages overall are still 17% lower than men, partially because women are vastly overrepresented in many relatively underpaid provinces of healthcare and social services. Again, women attempt more, but they don't see it through. Men do, because women usually do it as a cry for help. Men do it because they feel like they're a burden on society, and that they make a logical decision, and they say, I am better off not alive for everyone else than alive. So they do it.
Can I make a point here? If
Yeah.
women are committing suicide more often, could the fact that now they're entering in relationships with other women more often be part of it? Because it's not just men that have that one of the risk factors for committing suicide is problems or the end of a relationship. It's also the same for lesbian women. There's something about
Yeah.
relationships with women that just very fatal. So maybe that's part of it, and maybe also feminism itself might have some to blame, considering they're promoting a self lobotomy in their rhetoric. Like they're literally promoting women to do the equivalent of a soft lobotomy on themselves, which induces a negative, a death spiral of learned helplessness and resentment in women. Could you take some responsibility for that, potentially increasing the rate at which women commit suicide? Like, but regardless, like I noticed that she's again pivoting. She's trying to pivot everything towards women are the biggest victims, because that's part of the narrative. If women are the biggest victims, that means men are definitely the criminals, don't you know? Okay, let's keep going.
All right. Let's see. At this yeah, so and this same asymmetry helps to explain the unemployment gender gap among younger adults. Healthcare is the source of most labor force growth in the US, and it's women who are taking most of those jobs. Even though unemployment among Black women is up, partially because they were overrepresented in federal agencies that were decimated by Doge, and labor force participation among women with children is down, possibly because of rising childcare costs and the kinds of strict return to office policies endorsed by the Trump administration. So the Orange Man did this. Okay. Um, again, uh, federal agencies usually have a lot of bloat, and like if you want to like reduce spending, then you reduce the number of jobs. And it's, I mean, it's not my fault. Black women want all the government jobs, so if those go, then they're going, like, it's not like they're like, we're going to fire them because Black women work here. It's like, no, we're trimming down the government
Yeah.
anyway.
I mean, you guys
um
realize that eventually money it runs out or the entire system implodes with inflation. Like this cannot continue. We cannot just pretend we're being productive. And I don't include, like, I'm not just saying uh people who citizens, like the average Joe and Jane is the only one. I'm not just pointing fingers at that. I'm actually pointing far more fingers, like all of my fingers up at these corporate government entities. And I say they're corporate government entities because once your business plan includes getting bailed out by the government, you are deeply up the government's ass at that point. You can't consider yourself some sort of separate capitalist organization. I'm pointing my fingers at them too. Right? This is bullshit from top to bottom. What a
yeah.
surprise, considering we embraced bullshit in the relationship between men and women. Okay.
Among the more practical proposals to have emerged from the man crisis discourse is that the U.S. should mount a campaign to recruit more young men to so-called HEAL jobs. The acronym stands for Health, Education, Administration, and Literacy. The teaching and nursing professions are facing serious labor shortages. These jobs don't come with big paychecks and are often grueling, but they're also resistant to automation and relatively recession-proof. In the best-selling Germaid of Boys and Men, the social scientist Richard V. Reeves writes, "We need to break the cycle of professions taught by women for women. Some robust affirmative action is justified here." The Economist and former Times columnist Paul Krugman has recently taken up Reeves's refrain, writing on his Substack. Many of these occupations are female coded and have become more so over time, partly because they're underpaid. No, no. Do you know
What
why
the
men don't go into teaching? Because they're treated like predators. That's why.
Yeah, they don't go into nursing for similar reasons. And
Yes.
incidentally, nursing is still not more grueling than the jobs that men are already doing. Right? Okay, let's finish that paragraph.
All
It's
right.
it's sort of annoying that we're pivoting to women have it worse, of course.
Yeah, but it's not surprising.
No, I
Uh
predicted it, so of course it's not
yeah, yeah.
surprising.
But they don't have to be. We can help attract men to these occupations in part by increasing the wages HEAL
No, sir.
occupations pay. So she's just like, just pay them more. Let's just fix wages. I don't, you know what? When you say they don't pay that well, I'd like to see what that is, because I bet you can live off of like a job in health, education, administration, and literacy. I know that like teachers were always complaining about their money while living in a fucking house with a
Mm.
car. You know, I'm sorry, but you're doing pretty good if you have a house. If you have a mortgage. All right, anyway, women, it should be noted, have dominated the teaching profession since the 19th century, not because it's a misandrist job protection racket, but because early public education advocates found that they could expand the school system more quickly by hiring women teachers whom they could pay less than men. Really? Okay.
Ugh.
Early public education advocates, so early statists that wanted to use the state to pay for education. So the government that started education thought they could hire women and pay them less than men, is what you're claiming, while you're also advocating for the government to do things. So you know the government doesn't do things well, and you're claiming they are discriminatory against women, but you also think the government should do something about this too. They
Yeah,
should like
and
fix wages, they should like, take care of people, but you know that they're not good at doing stuff like jobs, but you also want them to do those things. You can't make up your mind about what you think about the state. Hmm.
no, she only knows that the state isn't men, so that's good.
Yeah. Unless the state is discriminating against women, in which case it is men.
Yes.
So
Men suddenly pop out of the state and
yeah,
become
men
president.
become the state. Yes.
Okay.
One might ask if difficult, essential work might be well paid at this moment in history, regardless of a person's sex. But
Well,
then
but
much of the centrist manosphere's rhetoric is predicated on refusing to see half of what's in front of you.
why does she never say that jobs like keeping the lights on and dangerous jobs that why doesn't she say that these jobs need to be paid more? Like she talks about nursing. You know why she talks about nursing? Because women are mostly in it. And she
Yeah.
knows that women can continue to discriminate against men going into nursing while getting better salaries. So it's not going to change anytime soon unless she wants to address mean girl bullying of men in nursing. Right? Right? No, she's not going to do that. Or the institutional threat that women in these women dominated industries pose men. So she knows that women can keep fortressing these issues. So she's not advocating for men in any sense. She's basically just saying, well, men have problems, so why don't we pay nurses more? Because that will help women.
Mm-hmm.
This is so so entirely expected. Okay, let's keep going.
Newsom's
Probably
executive order under concerning men and boys acknowledges the strong correlation between social media usage and mental health disorders such as depression and anxiety, but it doesn't note that these effects manifest in girls at significantly higher rates. Yeah, because of other fucking girls. That's why. But obviously you won't confront that. Like that anyway. And Newsom doesn't. First of all, Newsom, if he said it, he's wrong about that. But like, who cares? He's fucking Gavin Newsom. I don't trust him like as far as I could throw him.
But
But
he's part of the manosphere now,
he's
Brian,
not.
because
Yeah, he's basically part of the manosphere. Do you guys know that Gavin Newsom is in the manosphere now?
well,
This
because
is how
Brian,
crazy these people have gone.
it's because Gavin Newsom allows that there are other problems aside from men. Like this, like I
Yeah.
can't explain this. I cannot articulate this or emphasize
No,
this
I know
enough.
what you're saying, Allison. It's fine. We know
No,
what
no,
you're
but I'm
saying.
emphasizing it not just for you, but for the audience. I can't
Oh.
emphasize this enough. These people think that men are born criminal, right? And they reject anything that doesn't ultimately end on men being to blame and women being the biggest victims because that is their ideology. They see the entire world through that lens that men are born criminal. So Gavin Newsom is a centrist to this woman because while Gavin Newsom recognizes that men have privilege and are entitled and all, and Scott Galloway is a centrist because while Scott Galloway recognizes that men have privilege and are entitled, he also sees men as part of the solution, the potential solution, which is double plus bad. But he also recognizes there might be other problems aside from men. See, that's the centrist position, guys. That men aren't actually, there could be other problems that the human race faces. Like, for example, bears. Bears could be a problem that men aren't, or how about earthquakes? Earthquakes could be a problem that men aren't. How about tsunamis? How about starvation? Wait, no, starvation is always caused by men. How about well poisoning? Well, men are the ones poisoning the wells, right? Always. So the idea that somebody can recognize that there are problems that aren't at their core a result of the existence of men is centrism. Even if they do recognize that men maybe are the biggest problem, and that men have to change and have to be subordinate to feminists. And this is a direct result, again, of the criminalization, the criminalization of men themselves, of basically equating being a man with being born a criminal. This is the political result. This is the political fallout. And also soft lobotomies of women. This is something I'm so proud to be a part of. Okay.
All right. He could have said young people, unless college bursars and landlords run a discount program for the ladies, which I haven't heard about. So yeah, like how dare you make this about men when you could also make this about women? In fact, let's just make it about women. Emmanuel, in his Washington Post op-ed, endorses a double standard with even greater frankness. The cost of housing, he writes, is of course a problem for all Americans, men and women alike, but unpopular as it might be to say in some quarters of my party, the crisis affects one gender with particular potency. In other words, men and women pay the same bill, but we are obligated to understand that the social and spiritual price it extracts from men is higher. If women want an emergency to call their own, it can be that they are not having enough babies. All right, so why do men buy houses and why do women buy houses? That's all you got to ask. Why
Yeah.
do men buy houses? Because
Um,
they want a woman that wants a house. Why do
yeah.
women want to buy houses? Because they want a house.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing is that how horrible, guys, how horrible that this man has said that the gender that's most affected by homelessness is most affected by the price of homes.
Yeah.
How dare he? Again,
And of
this woman.
course, Emmanuel and Newsom want votes from men and women, so they're at least smart enough to know they're not going to shoot themselves in the foot by ignoring men. And they're at least maybe they're even recognizing that one of the main reasons why Kamala Harris lost the 2024 election is that no one in that party was able to even speak to men like in their language, like as human beings, because they had no way to attract them, and now they're trying to like address that. But this woman is like, no, she's like putting the monkey wrench right back in the machinery. No, you can't do that. And you know what? You can have that. That can be your friend. Those can be your people, as far as I'm concerned. Please let us support this woman. Take it all the way. Let's take it to its logical endpoint. That's what I want to see. Achieve singularity here. Erase men completely and watch and see if that helps. You know, seriously. Take it
Oh,
all the way to the fucking event horizon. Just go to the end. I want to see that because that's what this woman is doing. These guys are
mhm.
like, dude, I really, you know what? We're gonna need some men. We're gonna need some votes from men. What do we do? Even if it's the most cold, like absolutely, like I don't give a shit about these people. I just want their votes attitude. I'm just gonna try and sell it. This woman's like, no, you can't do that because you're erasing women, and that's what you get. That's what you get. This woman is exactly what you deserve, and I hope we see more of this. That's what I want.
Yeah. Well, at
I'm
least it's
serious.
clarity, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
it's
because like let's
absolute
just like
clarity.
at least she's honest. You know,
Yep.
like at least she's honest. Like I don't think men have problems. I don't care about their problems. You shouldn't care about their problems either. In fact, we should just make this about women all the time. And
Mhm.
then like and it's like, yeah, that's the framework you've created. So now live within it, see it to its end conclusion, and maybe when you come out the other side, if you come out the other side alive, you'll be like, "Huh, probably shouldn't do that again. Maybe we should start treating men like human beings. Maybe we should see this for what it is.
Mm.
Maybe women can also be a problem. Maybe they created this problem. Maybe this is how we got in this mess." Yeah,
Mm.
maybe all of that. So,
Yeah, good luck because unfortunately, I'm not kidding about the soft lobotomy. This is the horror that I was, like, thinking about last night in the middle of the night, like 3 in the morning. These women don't have the mental capacity to understand this situation at all. Like, they have I know it's not they haven't physically done it, but they have cut off their own perception of the parts of the brain that are capable of understanding what we're talking about.
mhm.
It's like I'm actually curious. I'm actually wondering if this narrative, this feminist narrative, has managed to cut off so many parts of women from so many parts of their brains that they no longer understand language in an abstract sense. That language has simply become a way to get people to do things, like just buttons to push. Like it's actually pretty terrifying. And I
Yeah.
I talk to these people. I don't know how to jar them out of it. How do you jar somebody out of the decision to lobotomize themselves after they've done so? You
Yeah.
can't. It's like so, I mean, good luck with this woman. I don't think that she's at this point capable of the cognitive function necessary to understand anything that we're saying. Please stop lobotomizing yourselves, ladies. Please. You know, we got some shit we need to fix. what else can you say? Like, and I say that to them, and they're like, "Oh, you're such a pick-me misogynist."
Yeah.
You realize that's the lobotomy talking.
All
Okay.
right. So the ambassadors of the centrist manosphere praise women. So this is the term now, centrist manosphere, for Gavin Newsom and Rahm Emanuel, for like far left
Oh,
Democrats. But
this is
they're
the
men
same.
though. They're men that want votes. So like that puts them in the manosphere. They're just men,
Okay,
just being
guys,
a
have you
man.
noticed this? Have you
Yeah.
noticed how big the manosphere is getting?
Yeah. We're huge. We're everywhere now, guys.
Yeah, like we're like literally everything that
We're
isn't
under your bed. We're
explicitly
in your closet.
every single moment saying men are criminal, men are criminal, men are criminal, men are criminal, men are criminal. Like every single men are illegitimate criminals, right? Every single, if you're not saying that at every single second, you are now part of the manosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps growing. Because even women who are feminist could be part of the manosphere if they even allow the possibility that men could be part of the solution, right? And that men have problems. Now they're part of the manosphere. You're right. Just keep doing this. Maybe at some point everybody will be in the manosphere and we can actually have a discussion about men.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, the ambassadors of the centrist manosphere praise women's advancement and the feminist cause while insisting that men's economic and vocational anxieties are more naturally potent. This ambivalence reveals the weakness of their side. The right wing manosphere knows that masculinity is a series of dominant signals beamed from behind iridescent Oakleys and the wheel of the most enormous pickup truck you've ever seen. It is a smirking multimillionaire who destroys a young woman at college hosted debate. It is, must it be said, an AR-15 openly carried. Manliness in the Trump era, Susan Faludi has written, is defined by display value, which exhibits itself in a pantomime of aggrieved aggression. Upon this stage, men's biggest problem is feminism, and the solutions are straightforward: restrict reproductive rights, propagandize about traditional gender roles, etc.
How about just point out that feminism is a biased, bioessentialist, supremacist bigotry that defines men as criminal by their virtue of their birth? And you
She
can
is giving away
across those.
her biggest problem with this, though.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
the thing. The fact that they criticize feminism, that's the reason
at
why
all.
she fights this at all.
Okay,
Yes.
but let's see what she's doing, not on the level of ideology, but on the level of political maneuvering. The ambassadors of the centrist manosphere praise women's advancement. The ambivalence reveals the weakness of their side. So she considers the right-wing manospheres knows that masculinity is a series of dominant signals. So masculinity is basically antisocial dominance, is what she's saying. So the right-wing manosphere knows that masculinity is antisocial dominance, and the centrist manosphere is more presumably progressive, but still sees men as part of the solution. So they're a problem too. Like they still recognize that men have traditional roles or roles that are essential to fulfill, and that could be positive. So that's the centrist manosphere. Now we have the far right manosphere that's just like masculinity is dominance, criminal dominance in every circumstance. Like fucking masculinity is Sauron, basically.
It's an AR-15 openly carried. It's a truck. It's basically like it's just this cartoonish thing that she sees, and all of it is
And
evil and pathological and criminal.
she's also framing feminism and anti-feminism, because anti-feminism now is restricting reproductive rights. Ooh, she just said restrict reproductive rights. Yeah, men's reproductive rights are already restricted. Like even if a man is raped, he's expected to assume the responsibilities of parenthood, and hand waving it about biology doesn't change that fact. Women aren't. They don't. Like there's a strict demarcation between women consent to sex and consent to parenthood, or even, yeah, there's a strict demarcation for women. And yet, even when men don't consent to sex, they still have strict liability for parental responsibilities. So there's no reproductive rights for men. Men have no reproductive rights. We've never even had that conversation. right?
Yep.
And propagandize about traditional. Well, you know that men also have traditional gender roles too, not just women, right? So all of this
Well,
is
they're the only ones still expected to carry them out, only when it serves women, of course.
yes, but so she's saying anti-feminism is traditional gender roles and restricting women's reproductive rights because we already restrict men's. Let's face it. So she gets to define anti-feminism and feminism.
Yep.
That's convenient. Okay.
All right. So the squishier centrist side has no such certainties. Galloway, in both his podcast and Notes on Being a Man, presents masculinity not as one side of a fixed binary, but as a state of mind and lifestyle, one equally available to men and women, and therefore impossible to define. Oh, so now we have a problem defining what a man is. Okay. Within this amorphous framework, men's biggest problem is likewise a feeling, an unreachable itch, or a marrow deep belief that men should still rank above women in the social hierarchy, just not as much as before. This belief may be misguided or unconscious, but it is nonetheless insuperable, and it must be accommodated for the good of us
She
all.
is
So,
talking from a position of being part of an ideology that has declared men criminal by virtue of birth, which is a huge violation of all academic ethics in our society. That's the position that she is opining from. And she's saying, well, men want to put themselves in front of women. No, men want it recognized that they understand risk better and they can manage it better, which is patently obvious based on biological differences. Right? Men want women to trust men doing the things that men do. That's all that means.
yeah.
Submission, the thing is that I think that word has become the most controversial, but we don't really even understand the original linguistic context of that word. The original linguistic context is the idea of someone with power submitting to the authority of someone who has knowledge, right? So it's the idea of an army submitting to a general. That's more of the linguistic context of that statement. And that's been stripped from it because, and the reason why it needed to be that way, because it is an implicit or explicit acknowledgement that women can do whatever the fuck they want. Let's face it. They can rebel, they can destroy, they can convince men to do things against their own interests. As Mae West said, when women go bad, men go right after them. Women can fucking destroy societies if they want. They can start wars if they want. They can create chaos and tumult. They can set men's hearts and minds against them itself. Right? They can break men. 100%. And here's the trick, ladies, not doing it. And that's the point of the word submission. Not doing it. Your rebellion is the easy thing. Not doing it is the hard thing. And that's why that word was chosen. And it's lost that original meaning. So we think it's just an act of dominance without having an incredible intelligence in it. And the reason why it was chosen is because it is a recognition of the power of women to do all kinds of destruction. If they don't submit to somebody who has greater knowledge of risk and systems. And that isn't like, it isn't about like this gormless, oh, he just dominates over me. No, it comes within a context that the man is supposed to also love his wife as he loves his own body and protect and provide for her as Christ protected and provided for the church. So all of that is missing when she talks about, oh, men just want dominance. No, that's you with your narrative that men are criminal, born criminal. You just want dominance. Okay.
Yep. All right. What these pundits are nudging us to do ever so politely is accept that women in the main are accustomed to being a little degraded, a little underpaid, and ignored and dampened in their ambition in ways that men are not and never will be.
Okay, wait. This is from the woman who said, why should men have anything? Why
Yeah.
should there be any unique value ascribed to men that isn't also ascribed to women? And of course, a bunch of values to women, like not being horrible criminals that men don't have. Like, she has the audacity to lecture people about degrading when she exists, again, in a philosophical framework that regards men as criminal for being born men and refuses to acknowledge any unique value that masculinity brings the world. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's
It's
okay. The
infuriating.
female coded person, to borrow Krugman's terminology, may feel overwhelmed by childcare costs, ashamed that she can't acquire a mortgage, or hollowed out by long hours as an ICU nurse, but such feelings do not disturb the order of the universe.
What?
Sounds like you need a man. This person's duties to protect, provide, and procreate are real, but they do not take the capital P. This person's opinions matter, but not decisively. The Times pundit Ezra Klein has lately suggested that Democrats consider running an anti abortion candidates in red states, even though more than 3/4 of Gen Z women support abortion rights. Rights, like jobs, can be gender coded, and these rights are valued accordingly. So she's getting a little bit into like policy stuff, but abortion's not a right, by the way. But anyway, they're gonna keep saying it is, but it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, let's just keep going, because I just find it astounding that she won't even allow that there's any unique value to men or masculinity. And then she
No.
insists on saying that these people are no, and it's not even the right. It's not even the far right, guys. They were talking about the centrist manosphere, which they just magicked out of nowhere. They
Yep.
are the ones who are denigrating women. This woman
Yes.
who refuses to acknowledge any value for masculinity or maleness, none whatsoever. And she's the one saying that the centrists are denigrating women by even focusing on men at all. And that attitude can only be explained by her having a political access or axes or axis. Yeah,
Axis.
axis. Okay, where one side is recognition of men's value and that they're part of the solution, or that men have value, period. The middle is recognizing that men are a problem, but they could be part of the solution. And her side is men are only a problem and can never be part of the solution and have nothing unique to add. Men are completely illegitimate. Men are born criminal, thus completely illegitimate. That explains this entire article, that framework. Okay,
Yeah.
keep going. And that
You
in
need
projection.
you need dad, Galloway, who has 2 sons, said on a recent podcast. Oh my God, the humanity. A father? The nuclear family he imagines seems to be one in which the mom is the default parent, while the necessary dad is the authority figure to whom mom can appeal as the occasion demands. Wow, that's you extracted a lot from 3 words. There are certain moments when my partner needs me to weigh in, Galloway explained. I don't know if it's the depth of my voice, my physical size. Boys, he went on, begin tuning
Tuning
out
out.
their mom over time. Her by the way, these quotation marks are a mess. Like it's all wrong. But anyway, look at it. No, look, because the word boys should be in quotes, but it's not. It's outside the quotes. So that
Yeah,
screws up
no,
the
no,
whole
no,
sentence.
it is. No, I
Yeah,
understand.
okay.
The grammar is questionable. Like, just keep
Yeah.
going.
One might wonder how boys lose these frequencies in the first place. One might long for a deep voice to explain it.
I think that's
So, yeah,
sarcasm. Yeah.
but this is like there's some truth here because there's like a notoriously viral video of a little Asian boy. I think he's Asian or Latino or something, and he's throwing a tantrum because his mom is telling him to go to bed and he doesn't want to go to bed. And then the father comes in the room and tells him to go to bed once, and he goes to bed right away. Now, I don't know what you could, what the reasoning for that might be, but there's definitely something to it. Like a
Hmm.
father does bring something to the family that is unique, that the
One
mother can't
might
really
wonder.
substitute, but you
One might
can't say
wonder.
that.
One might wonder how boys lose these frequencies in the first place. They lose them because they want to find out who they are and what their worth is. But you
Yeah.
can't acknowledge the legitimacy of anything beneficial about men or boys. Like, and this is the thing. If a woman can't acknowledge that, does she deserve the benefits of it?
Yeah.
You got to really ask yourself that. Okay.
Okay. In A Boys of Men, Reeves,
Oh,
a fellow at the Brookings Institution, draws on the work of the late British sociologist Jeff Dench, who posited that the fundamental weakness of feminist analysis is its failure to see that men may need the status of the main provider role to give them a sufficient reason to become fully involved and stay involved in the longer term, draggy business of family life.
okay. No. And this is Jeff Dench is giving feminism too much credit. Okay? He's framing men as a problem if they don't have this identity. When feminism itself is a massive problem. It is a massive breach of ethics. Okay? You don't declare half the human race to be born criminal. That's eugenicist talk. It is a massive ethical breach. And that is the biggest problem of feminism. So it has nothing to do with how feminism goes up against traditional gender roles. But again, Jeff Dench is framing men as the problem, and feminism is failing to manage men correctly. No, feminism is a blight upon the human psyche in and of itself. This problem isn't that it isn't managing men correctly. Okay, keep going.
Right. And Reeves co-signs the supply-side economist George Gilder's hypothesis that once wives become both provider and procreator, their husbands become exiles in their own homes. Reeves mostly rejects Gilder and Dench's line of revanchist patriarchy, but he credits them for correctly diagnosing the dangers of anomie and detachment among men stripped of their traditional role. In an age when 2 out of every 5 households have a female primary breadwinner, no one seems to know what fathers are for, Reeves has said. 1 in 6 fathers does not live with any of his children. One study found that 32% of non resident fathers had minimal contact with their children within 1 year of separating from their children's mother, and that within 8 years, this number rose to 55%.
Yeah, but it's because they're losing custody. But
Yeah.
all right, so the dangers of a detachment among men's tradition. Okay. Well, shared parenting fixes that. Like we already know the practical solution. Just
Mhm.
shared parenting, which feminists oppose because they oppose any initiative that actually treats men like human beings instead of a problem. Okay, let's next
Yeah.
paragraph.
Xerinx gave us a super chat for $5 and says, "We all know men aren't worth anything, guys. We're fundamentally worth the few seconds it takes for us to help create another human."
No,
Sarcasm.
you're worth a lot. Oh, okay, good. That's
It's
good.
sarcasm, Allison. Come on.
Okay.
All right. Reeves frets that fatherless homes will beget more lost boys, more 20 something men living in their childhood bedrooms, and more fractured families. If we do not update our obsolete model of the breadwinner father, he warns, we will continue to see more and more men being left out of family life. As for what authority has decreed that these absent fathers should be left out of their own families, Reeves never says the culprit's identity is shrouded in passive voice, nor does Reeves explain how women's attainment of economic independence would cause their husbands to be stripped of anything, much less the many non economic aspects of being a spouse or parent.
No, divorce law does that. Shared parenting. The end.
Yeah.
Like this, there's a solution. We don't need to philosophize. We don't need to conjecture. We don't need to cast the villain in passive voice. We just need to universally apply shared parenting and stop listening to feminists and their bosom buddies, the divorce lawyers. Okay, next paragraph.
The notion that fathers wander away from their families owing to some gnawing sense of existential dislocation, some humiliating certainty of their own uselessness or usurpation is especially pungent when one takes into account the enormous gender gap in housework and child rearing in
It's not.
heterosexual marriages. So that's why? Okay, never mind. According to the Gender Equity Policy Institute, a totally not biased source, guys, mothers who work full time
No, they
do
don't.
almost twice as much household labor as fathers. Research by the Nobel winning economist Claudia Golden has suggested that married men's disinclination towards housework and other draggy business of family life may be holding back birth rates, which should pique the interest of Republican
No, it doesn't.
pronatalists such
Okay.
as J.D.
All
Vance.
right. I'm going into this, Brian, because this is a whole bunch of fucking bullshit. All right. First of all, again, this guy made men out to be the problem. The real problem is that women don't want to marry and have children with men who are not providers. And the other real problem is that an equitable distribution of household chores is actually associated with a higher divorce risk. So women will say they want that, but apparently they only want to just feel resentment over that, because if they get it, they divorce the man. All right. So these solutions are no solutions whatsoever. The one solution is shared parenting, period. That's what we should be promoting.
Or don't get divorced.
Or don't get divorced. But that shared parenting actually reduces the rate of divorce. So might actually over time considerably reduce the rate of divorce. And also that would ensure that men don't lose contact with their children over time. But so this is all bullshit. Even the start of this, because Reeves is just some random dude she found. Doesn't mean that he has anything, like what he's saying is empirically sound, which it isn't. Again, how are men being disaffected from their families when they aren't able to start them because women want a provider and men aren't earning enough to be in that role at this time? Right? That there's nothing to do. This is all driven by women's choices, which Reeve himself is refusing to acknowledge to the full extent, even though this woman is reading it into what he's saying anyway, because he's the soft, misogynist manosphere center, which is just soft misogyny, according to her, or something.
Yep.
All right. So, but all of this is wrong. Men aren't getting into relationships because they don't have enough funds to be regarded as providers by the women who want to marry, who would marry them otherwise, period. They're getting divorced because they lose their status as provider. They don't have equitable custody arrangements in law, so they lose access to their children. Okay. Household equitable division of household tasks, unfortunately, is associated with divorce. The only way to change that is to, I guess, get women not to regard men as doing household tasks as being not alpha and not sufficiently strong for them, right? So it seems like women want men more to refuse to do household tasks than they want them to actually do them. Okay, so none of this is correct. Starting with Reeves blaming men for feeling exiled from their families. What families? And who is doing the exiling? Is it really the man just wandering off, is like, oh, I don't want to make enough money, so I'm just going to wander off into the weeds? Or is it the woman initiating divorce? Again, everybody here is just dancing like a bunch of imps around the actual thing that's happening. They're just spending all of their time dancing around it because they don't have the fucking balls to blame women. Or even just be like, yeah, men, women can be also to blame. We can't do that. And it's because of the gigantic oversized influence of this ethically bankrupt feminist narrative that men are born criminal. And everybody has to dance around that. Everyone has to tithe mentally to that. And women in particular, because they have to lose certain cognitive functions so they can continue to be a puppet of it. All right, let's keep going.
So I only got about 15 minutes before I have to go pick
Shit.
Lindsay up. Just let you know.
Okay,
so
we're almost. Yeah.
Like, do you want me to just finish this article then?
Yeah, we could finish this article. I think we'll. Okay, let's give you like a quick update on South Korea. Everything is screwed.
Well, we could like go through the South Korea thing on Friday. I mean, I don't know if
Yeah,
you
sure.
have something else in mind, but we have,
And the Twitter
yeah,
thing
we could
will
do
only
that.
take a moment. Like, we just need to point out the finding, right? So let's try to get as far as we can into this because I
All right.
had more meat than I thought it would.
Yeah. The deeper one sinks into our nation's alleged man boy problem and its potential solution, she said dismissively. The more the women reader may begin to feel something stronger than resentment or intellectual disdain, she may begin to feel a chauvinistic gratitude in her sex. The familiar flatness of feeling a little degraded seems preferable to the anger, entitlement, and alienation that, we are told over and over, gnaws away at so many male specimens. What a gift is really to have no choice in the matter, to have to move out of your parents' home, to show up for your shift, to change the diaper, not because of any of it is gender affirming, but because life is full of tasks that need doing and you are the person who
What
does
the
them. At
fuck?
least then you know who you are.
What the fuck does this even mean? The deeper
She
one
resents
sinks
that men have problems, like that people even pointed out.
that the more the woman reader may begin, fuck off. You don't speak for me. Lobotomy sister. She may begin to feel a chauvinistic gratitude in her sex. It's because
Yeah.
life is full of tasks that need doing, and you're the person who does them. So, what is it to have to move out of your parents' house? I don't think your parents are forcing you out. I think you have the means to move out of your parents' house, and probably because your boyfriend is paying your bills, or a good portion of you, to show up for your shift so you have a job. Isn't that empowerment? Men don't have a job. They're just homeless or stuck in their parents' basement. To change the diaper so you have access to your children. Not because any of it is gender affirming, because life is full of tasks that need doing. So, because you have the responsibilities associated with what we consider success and privilege, you are the victim. But you're not just the victim. You're the victim of being encouraged not to feel like the victim. This paragraph is a lobotomy talking.
Yep.
Let's keep going. I
All
think
right.
we're at 4 left, so let's blaze through it.
Right. Um Reading Galloway, one gets the sense that men last knew who they were about 75 years ago, much as the Trump administration does when it vows to revive the coal industry or when it shares fascist light iconography, yawn, that would be at home in a Paul Verhoeven film. I mean, the one that, never mind. Galloway appeals to the reader's nostalgia for mid century peak male. It was young men, he reminds us, who stormed the beaches at Normandy and who won the Battle of the Bulge. When Germans or Russians are streaming over the border or firing from the beach, big dick energy isn't just a nice idea, it's fucking mandatory.
That
Of course,
wasn't
the German soldiers were young men too, and it isn't clear which border Galloway thinks the Russians were crossing or if he realizes which side they were fighting for. So she's just being a bit pedantic, I think.
Yeah, she's being pedantic. I don't think she's really recognizing. Because
Yeah,
again, you have to remember, this is lobotomy talk. Um, I don't. First of all, that wasn't big dick energy. Like, you actually read the stories of soldiers
yeah,
and what that stuff was like.
yeah. It's not glorious just because people who'd never seen action made movies about it.
Yeah,
Um,
it is a horrifying thing, and it is a result of men's willingness to put themselves in harm's way to protect others. So men literally endure hell on earth because they have that instinct to do so to protect others. It has nothing to do with big dick energy, you fucking moron.
mhm.
Sorry, that just really is
Oh, it's
fucking.
okay. No, it's okay. It's being dismissive. It's purposeful. Galloway also singles out two monumental building projects of the Great Depression as bygone proof of men's capacity for collective effort, incredible bravery, risk taking, aggression, and sacrifice.
Wait,
One
wait,
was the construction of the Hoover Dam. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
wait. Okay, no, just continue. Finish.
Well, I know we're gonna learn that women had it worse. That's what this whole thing is about. One was the construction of the Hoover Dam, during which Galloway points out scores of laborers died of heat exhaustion or carbon monoxide poisoning. The other was the Empire State Building. Construction began in 1930 and ended a year later under budget and ahead of schedule, Galloway notes approvingly. He does not add that the skyscraper went up so fast and so cheaply, in part because New York City was filled with men who would work for next to nothing under grueling, even lethal conditions, because the implosion of global capital had buried wages and organized labor beneath it. Perhaps these dire conditions only burnish the men's heroism.
Well,
So
so men are the
we gotta,
problem too.
yeah, we gotta make this about, because the thing is, like, you can say men were paid next to nothing, but they still were willing to do it.
Yes.
They wanted to do it and they used it to support their families. We were in a Great Depression. There was nothing that you could do to change that. They had to get through it. So that's what some men did. And you're just going to poo-poo that because you don't want to acknowledge that men were doing something. They were
Well, no,
trying
because
to be productive and helpful. Instead, you're like, well, that's because of the capitalism,
yeah, men. That's what she's saying.
conditions. Like, it's not
It's because
men. We
of
can't talk
men.
about
No,
that. Let's talk about something else.
no, it's because men did this to men. Men did this
Yes.
to themselves, so that we can't have any kind of gratitude for the enduring sacrifice of men because men did it to themselves. And I agree. Like Galloway saying that this is big dick energy is absolute bullshit. But anyway, this is men's willingness to endure hardship for their families in order to support and protect and provide them for them. Right? That is an incredible testament to what men are. And that cannot be taken away from them at all. I mean, conservatives, no offense, will try to take this away from men by saying, oh, society is producing weak men, or no. Society could not possibly at all prepare young men for World War I or World War II. Society had nothing to do with the fact that men stood up to the circumstances and fought on both sides. Both sides being used to solve a political crisis, a political problem that people felt they were incapable of doing peacefully. So men lost their lives to solve a political problem, just like they lose their lives to solve a problem of building a dam or building a skyscraper. Right? These political problems are not created by men. They're created by societies in conflict, resource systems in conflict. They're much bigger than men. They're even bigger than the politicians, the male politicians who are trying to deal with the problem. Our economies are bigger than all of that, right? So this is a manifestation of men's willingness to step into the breach and endure hardship and sacrifice themselves for the sake of others. It's an emergent property, and we can abuse it by using them to solve political problems, which women are equally responsible for, or we can honor it and try to create a society where we need to rely on it as little as possible and recognize that it isn't society that makes men like this. It's men who make men like this. It is an inheritance of their very biological nature. So conservatives are wrong. This isn't big dick. I don't know if conservatives would say this. I don't know
Not
if all
conservative. This was like, he's another liberal. That's, I
well,
mean, I'm just
from
saying.
from my
I
impression of the
I know
conservatives
that
who
they're,
say that
yes, sure.
the weak times create strong men, etc. They're wrong when they say it's societies that makes men. It's men who make societies, and we need to honor that. And none of this is honoring that. And what's really interesting to me is what she says in the last two paragraphs. So let's go ahead and read that.
All right.
She fundamentally misunderstands everything.
Yeah, by coincidence, Notes on Being a Man is being published in the same month as Glenn Kurtz's Men at Work, the Empire State Building, and the Untold Story of the Craftsman Who Built It, which adds biographical details and dimensions to Lewis Hines' heroic photographs of the skyscraper's construction process. Most of the names of these laborers are not known, at least in part because they were seen not as men, but as hands, Kurtz writes, as something less than complete people, or at best, as embodiments of generalities and abstract ideals, such as those espoused in Galloway's book. For all we know, these men too felt that the system was fundamentally broken and rigged against them, but they are long dead and largely anonymous, and so they can be whoever we want them to be.
Yeah, maybe they did see that, but they still went to work to protect and provide for their families because that's in men's nature, to take risks and make sacrifices to benefit others, even at the cost of their own lives. And we have relied on that to get to the point where we are at. I don't know why she thinks this paragraph contradicts recognition of that essential nature of men.
Yeah, it
Let's
is
let's
weird.
let's read the last
All right.
one.
Kurtz unearths what he can of their lives, and he finds plenty of evidence of what today we might call men in crisis: deaths of despair, dislocation and broken families, dependency. A carpenter named Finn Egeland, who was 30 years old, either jumped or fell from the Empire State Building as construction was wrapping up. His death was ruled a suicide. Another carpenter, Matthew McKean, had abandoned his wife and 2 children back in their home country of Scotland, and a stone setter in his 20s named James Kerr was still living with his mother.
So she's basically just saying, I'm going to take away your heroic narrative about these men from the past. You men are nothing because you're vulnerable and you have things that harm you and you still go to work despite it. This is gross. You see what she's doing here, right?
Yeah.
She thinks this takes away men's heroism. Of course, there's that little one where the man supposedly abandoned his wife and child. Abandoned or went to get work for them. You know, and
well, there's it's a lot of weird assumptions to make, considering you just said that nobody knows these guys' names.
Yeah.
So like we either don't know them or they're awful.
Yeah. or they're pathetic, right?
Yeah.
They're not part of masculinity because they endured lives of quiet desperation to make someone else provided and protected for. What the fuck does she think that she's... I should stop swearing so much, but this is just so infuriating. What does she think? What point does she think she's making? I think she honestly thinks that when she says, "Oh, the extreme right manhood is about performing dominance," and she thinks that saying this stuff, describing these vulnerabilities, is a gotcha against the manosphere.
Yep.
Because she thinks that men can only be admired when they are infinitely tough and alpha. She's really revealing a lot about her psychology, and not so much about her opponents, except for Scott, this Galloway fellow, with his big dick energy and all this other nonsense. Why is it that when progressive men always try to pretend to appeal to anybody else in the manosphere, they always go with the big swinging dick energy? Why don't you go with recognizing that men have been vulnerable throughout all of human history, and yet they have stepped up and still saw themselves in terms of service to others? Like, they've still stepped up and protected and provided for others. The great heroism of these men is not that they were invulnerable or impervious or that they had big dick energy. It's because they suffered and they still took it upon themselves to try to make someone else's life better. Right? And I don't think this woman understands that in the slightest. Okay.
Nah, she doesn't.
Yeah. Well, a lobotomy sister has weighed in on the situation of men. Okay, let's go through the Twitter really quick, if possible. Is it possible?
Yeah, I mean, I got like 5 minutes because I gotta get I'm going to the gym, so I gotta change clothes and then I gotta go pick her up. So,
okay.
But all right. So this is just is there a link to the original article?
I believe, yeah.
Yeah, I got it right here.
There. Yep.
So male students, this was shared by Brandon Warmk, and he says this is from Fire is the it's like the freedom, I forget what it's called, but it's like a college organization. But anyway, Fire.org shared this article. Male students show more tolerance for political enemies than females show for their own allies. We just saw that in the article we just read, actually.
Holy hell. Like, that's a lot of lack of tolerance, isn't it? You like, literally, she's basically saying that any male feminist or progressive man and who in any way engages with the issues of men is part of the manosphere and part of her enemy.
Yes.
And an enemy.
Exactly. Yes.
Men can only be seen as the problem. They can only be seen as criminal. They can't be seen as having inherent worth in her cosmology. Okay, let's read. Let's take a look at this. I mean, it's mostly just a bunch of graphs that are interesting. So,
all right. Hold on.
Just
okay.
Got it.
So, suppose you're a democratic socialist who has been invited to speak at a college campus. Who do you think would be more likely to try to silence you? A left-leaning woman or a right-wing man? I think that's obvious. It may be reasonable to assume someone with similar ideology would be more tolerant of your views, but new data by Fire suggests that that's not the case. Amazingly, it turns out men are often more tolerant of the opposite side than women are of their own side.
Amazingly?
Yeah, amazing. Not amazingly. Not at all surprising.
No.
Because there's like another study that's currently being worked on that is finding, so it's not finished yet, but I think this is going to bear out that women are like far more likely to advocate for violence against their political opponents than men. Which makes sense because I think women are more likely to advocate for violence because they're not connected to the consequences of it. Yeah, so like they can just advocate for it. So
yeah, well, I mean, even the men who enact the violence know that it's going to end up with consequences to them.
Yeah, they're usually prepared to like go to jail or something or die.
Yeah,
or
just have to deal with it in the case of first responders, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's look a little bit closer at this.
All right. You want me to zoom in? I can't. Well, I can. I guess I can.
You can. Well, you can take a look. So apparently the most the most tolerant is libertarian. I don't think that surprises anyone. But honestly, it pretty much clusters with men on being more tolerant no matter what kind of political position you have, except for some haven't thought much about this. So if you look at the little gray dot, like the little gray circle, it down, yeah, right. You just went over it right there.
Here?
Yeah, that's men who haven't thought much about this, who apparently, despite not having any actual position, are really intolerant to other positions. I just thought that was funny. How does that work? I don't believe in anything, but I hate everybody else who believes in something. Maybe that's it.
Oh, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Women who haven't thought about this are also the least tolerant. So
Yeah.
I guess it's just
They just want everybody to shut up and be censored.
Yep.
We can all live in NPC land with no opinions. Okay, let's read a little further. Yeah.
The data taken from Fire's annual college free speech rankings reveals that overall tolerance for opposing views is low among both male and female students, but the males consistently display far more tolerance than females, regardless of their politics. In fact, with the exception of male libertarians who are slightly more tolerant, men of all political ideologies have roughly the same level of tolerance as each other. The same is true of women. In other words, it's not that liberals are more tolerant than conservatives or vice versa. Liberal and conservative men are more or less equally tolerant, as are liberal and conservative women. It's being a man, liberal or conservative, that makes the difference.
It's being a man. So
being
this
a man,
this is another positive quality in men. And I actually got into it with somebody was saying that maybe it's because testosterone leads to fairness or stuff like that. I don't think that's what it is. And Grok confirmed that testosterone does lead to competitiveness. So I think what it is, it's not that these men are less competitive than the women. It's because they're more willing to risk potential harm and discomfort of other people's ideologies. Like, so they're more willing to risk the potential threat that the other poses to them.
Yeah.
And in order to uphold ethics, system ethics and principles like freedom of speech. And I think that's really critical. You got to really contend with this when you think about how a society needs to be able to evolve with evolving circumstances, but also stay true to itself. And you need to be able to have a dialogue between what I would say is a liberal principle or liberal virtue, which is the sacrifice of self-doubt, like being able to doubt yourself so that you can evolve in the face of new circumstances. And then you also need the conservative virtue, which is the ability to sacrifice yourself for something other than yourself, for duty and lineage and society. Right. So these are the two principles that a society needs to have in balance. There are more, but these are essentially two that need to have in balance to be able to go forward, to evolve, but stay true to itself at the same time. And in order to have those two principles in balance, you have to have the discussions between people who don't start to regard the other half as being a danger or wanting to silence them, to regard the other half in terms of tribalism, to be able to accept somebody believing something different than you, but not seeing them as the enemy because of that. And all advanced societies manage this balance for at least a certain amount of time. And you can see why it might be essential for a society to keep the conversation between men. Because men will put the dialogue ahead of their own individual interests or tribalistic interests. I think they understand honor better than women do. And they understand a collective purpose, even in the face of somebody who disagrees with them politically. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And this is a benefit to masculinity. Mm-hmm. One of the things that this woman refuses to acknowledge while demonstrating exactly the problem that excessively feminized institutions demonstrate, which is sensorialness, like blue nosing, witch hunts, relational bullying. And so I just thought that this was interesting. It was a nice counterpoint to what we read. I know that you got to get going. Do you want to put anything in there, Brian?
No, I think that's good.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not surprised by this at all.
No, so. It's not surprising.
No.
Because as women's participation, for example, in academia has grown, so is their censorship. Right now, I don't know if there's a way to balance it out and make it so that women can participate without changing the climate so much that it ends up destroying the institutions that they participate. You can't have progress without debate and disagreement. And if women regard debate and disagreement as a reason to throw people out of the organization and shut them down, then how do you manage to maintain the necessary debate and agreement in a feminized institution? You can't. And I don't know if we got rid of all this feminist narratives that give women the impression they don't have to listen to men, they don't have to understand men, the virtues that men represent, they don't even have to recognize that masculinity adds anything of note or worth to the world. I wonder if we got rid of that, if we could improve this. But well, we'll see. We'll see if what we talk about ever gets a mainstream acceptance, and we start questioning this massive ethical breach that feminism represents. All right, so I shouldn't keep talking. Feedthebadger.com/justthetip if you want to send a comment about anything that we've discussed throughout this show. It's the very best way for you to send us a tip because we get the full benefit of whatever you send. And it's the best way for you to send us a comment because you don't put it through YouTube's comment enhancement system. And also that comment stays in our community so we can ponder it. We can derive more benefit from your wisdom because it lasts longer. All right, so I'll hand it back to you, Brian.
Okay, well, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, to the bell for notifications. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Framing. We'll talk to you guys in the next one.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.